What's up guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched where we look at all things mental health and psychology. Don't forget to subscribe to us also if you want to check out more awesome content. So this week we have a video for the psychology students out there, either people that are about to start their psychology degree or people that are thinking about undertaking a psychology degree. And we're going to be looking at my dumbest mistakes that I made during my studies in psychology. I'm going to be running you through a little bit about what it's like to actually study a psychology degree, but ultimately we're going to be looking at my biggest mistakes in my psychology degree, or the biggest mistakes I've made during my psychology degrees. Now, if you know GetPsyched, you know that we do lots of content about mental health development, psychological understanding, but we also do loads of videos for psychology students. And if you're interested in that, if you're a psychology student or thinking about it, make sure to check out the description. I've got loads of video links there about content that we've done in the past for psychology students. But we also have a playlist on GetPsyched catered exactly for psychology students. So after this video, make sure to check that out for more content. And make sure to watch this video right to the end because there's some really valuable content here, guys, about some of the biggest mistakes I made during my psychology studies, lessons that you're definitely gonna wanna learn. And if you're enjoying today's video, make sure to hit that like button. And as always, you can comment on the videos and I'll get back to you. Maybe you've got a question about some of the stuff that we've been looking at today, or maybe you've got your own points or your own mistakes that you've made during your psychology studies that you wanna share with other people. By all means, comment and I'll be sure to get back to you. So let's get into the video. And the first biggest dumbest mistake I made during my psychology studies was I left assignments to the very last minute. Now, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about my top tips on assignment writing, then make sure to check this video out up here above my head. We did that a number of years ago. Please forgive the video editing, it's pretty shoddy, but it's a really good video. It's got lots of really good tips about how to manage assignment writing and actually how to do assignments. But for me, the biggest mistake, or number one, the biggest mistake that I made during my psychology studies was I left assignments way too late to start. Normally I would start them max a week before. And for any kind of psychological assignment, any kind of psychology university degree, that kind of process is just too late. I really have to tell you about this one time actually when I'm thinking of lessons, dumb mistakes that I've made in my psychology studies and thinking about leaving assignments late. One time I actually left an assignment so late that I really panicked myself. I was making multiple copies of drafts and I was, the night before, and I ended up submitting a draft that I had done an hour into working on it and it was only half done. Failed the whole thing, but that just shows you about how you're getting into that process of leaving assignments late. It can really stress you out. It can get you to that point of panic, and that was exactly the case with me, and I ended up submitting half an essay and failing the whole thing. Please hear me when I'm saying this. Start your assignments earlier. A week to go before the deadline, starting that assignment is far too late. The process of writing psychology assignments or psychology reports or essays can be very different from other assignments or other essays that people might do in different degrees. There's a huge self-reflective element. There's a self-awareness element that's needed. There's also an engagement with empirical literature, theoretical literature, studies, all these kind of things that needs to happen. You need to have that set structure as well. And in order to tick all those boxes, you have to be starting these assignments early. Now, what I've learned as I've gone into my doctorate is I actually start these assignments months in advance, and I spend probably a couple of weeks, and when I say weeks, I mean working on this every day, just on the structure, thinking about how this essay is gonna flow. Because I know from personal experience, from these dumb mistakes that I've made during my psychology studies, is that one of the big mistakes I can make is that my assignments don't really flow very well. I can kind of get lost in my thoughts, or I can repeat myself. And actually creating that structure, spending some real time on that structure has been a really valuable thing that I've learned off these mistakes I've made during my psychology studies. So that's a really important thing first, is don't start these assignments too late. Another big mistake that I made during my psychology studies was I didn't value, or I didn't think about the importance of self-awareness or reflective practice during my psychology studies. There was that big part of me that said, I can just get by with just attending lectures, or I can just get by with starting that assignment a week before it's due, or I can just get by with, attending the odd tutorial, and I can pass through that. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that worked. There were plenty of times that didn't work, and it got me in a lot of trouble at points, and it made my life very difficult at points. So when I think about the biggest mistakes I've made during my psychology degrees, I think, I didn't think enough about the reflective element of my practice. I didn't think enough about self-awareness. One of the great things I love about psychology degrees or studying psychology is that it's not all about what other people say. It's not all about quoting so-and-so. It's not all about reviewing certain empirical literature, although that is so important and that's a massive part of our psychology studies. It's just a branch of the tree. The other branches include things about personal development, self-awareness, reflective practice, and these are the kind of things that I wish I had started earlier during my psychology studies. And I mean during my undergraduate, even though I'm doing a counselling psychology doctorate now, and that's a massive part of what I do, I wish I had started thinking on those lines during my psychology undergrad. You know, when I think about those biggest mistakes, the dumbest mistakes I've made during my psychology studies, not thinking about self-awareness or reflective practice definitely has to be a big one. Okay, the next dumbest mistake that I made during my psychology studies was not taking extra classes. Now, when I say taking extra classes, what I mean by this is my university were really good at providing extra opportunities for learning. They ran lectures and tutorials that you didn't have to register for. They also ran things like essay writing tutorials or lecture note-taking tutorials or writing your dissertation tutorials. I really wish I had engaged with that more. That's a big mistake because I thought I could do this on my own. That's how egotistical I was, that's how arrogant I was. I thought I could just manage this. I thought I could coast by at points. And this is early stages. I definitely don't do that now. But early stages, I thought that. And when I think back on it now, I was thinking, what was I doing with my time when I wasn't engaging with those extra classes that were available to me, that were given out for free? I was probably not doing anything productive, and I regret that time now when I look back at it. So I really want to encourage people, if there are extra opportunities for you to learn more about psychology, that doesn't necessarily even have to come from within your university. That can be outside external workshops or contacting other psychologists and learning a little bit from them. You know, these are the kind of things I wish I had invested in. They were definitely within my radar. They were definitely options for me. I just didn't take them up. And that was a big dumb mistake, there's no doubt about it. So when I'm thinking about the biggest mistakes I've made during my psychology studies, not engaging with extra content, not engaging with extra classes or extra tutorials has to be a big one. Really should think about that one. One of the other biggest or dumbest mistakes I've made during my psychology studies has to do with exams. Now, when I think back to my exams, I used to think that there was one answer to questions that I had to memorize in order for me to pass my exams. And in truth, all that did was it caused more anxiety for the process of exams in my psychology studies, because I was going into those exams praying and hoping that those questions would turn up, and praying and hoping that I would be able to memorize an answer, something to that effect, that I had looked at a couple of days before. I didn't really study enough for my exams. You're starting to get a bit of a theme here about the mistakes I made during my psychology studies, that I really didn't invest enough time in things. This is early on. I really didn't take it seriously enough. And one of the big things was I used to try and memorize one answer for an exam question. I used to hope that this exam question will come up, I'll memorize this one answer, and I'll just write it down on a piece of paper. And that again got me in a lot of trouble. If you guys are interested a little bit more in this, actually, I might do a little video on my psychology exam preparation process. I did a little kind of student guide thing once on GetPsyched. There's a little playlist if you go right to the bottom of the channel. I did it a couple of years ago now about my exam study process. Welcome to another episode of GetPsyched, and today we've got a little bit of a different look. We're going to be doing a 4-week exam study guide, so stay tuned. I might try and rehash that a little bit because I used to do a lot of mind maps when I was studying exams in my latter years when I actually was really focused on what I was doing. And those mind maps really helped because they made things a little bit more fluid. They made things a little bit more natural. I wasn't rigid to just one answer. You know, I used to just memorize one answer and try and write that down, as I've said. And as I developed, I used mind maps more. So that was a really helpful process where, you know, that let things be a little bit more fluid. If a topic came up that I had looked at, I could think about the mind map and I could think about the different ways I could manipulate that mind map to answer the question. It made me feel so much less anxious. It made just the process so much easier. I was able to memorize that mind map. You know, I could imagine the imagery of it, the colors, all that kind of stuff. It made things much more fluid. So I maybe do a video on that and GetPsyched in the future, actually, if you guys are interested. Comment, let me know. But yeah, that's the kind of way that, you know, you should be thinking about your studies. You know, when I'm thinking about those dumb mistakes I've made during my psychology studies, it was definitely trying to focus on one rigid answer. But the mind maps were a little bit different and they really helped. What I would say about studying exams and psychology degrees is that you have to be able to be fluid, and in learning and in doing that process, it actually makes it easier for you. I know a lot of people think, oh, if I'm not memorizing answers, then I'm going to go in and there's going to be nothing for me to write down. That's absolutely not the case. If you learn the kind of theory and the concepts and you're more organic and fluid in your exam preparation, that's going to equip you to a greater degree for those exam questions, because you can manipulate your answers, you can be more fluid. You can look at different concepts, different parts of your answers, and it just sounds like a much better answer, rather than going in with this rigid question like I used to do and just writing it down and hoping that the marker was nice to you and just said, okay, well, he's written something, let's just give him marks, which is exactly what I used to think and hope. So you really got to avoid that mistake. That's a big mistake I used to make during my psychology studies. When you're studying for those exams, think about the multitude of questions that you could be asked, and think about what it would be like to be asked a question that you hadn't studied for and how you might answer that with the knowledge that you've obtained. I think that's a really, really positive way of studying for those psychology exams. Don't do what I did in the early stages. Okay, my last biggest, dumbest mistake that I made during my psychology studies was that I didn't learn statistics. Oh, I know what people are thinking. If you're a psychology student, if you're about to go into psychology, or you're currently doing it, you know that word strikes fear into the heart of every psychology student. I've heard it all. I didn't take psychology to do maths. I'm not a mathematician. I can't do stats. Believe me, my mum's a maths teacher, and she encouraged me to drop my higher maths after every night trying to teach me maths. That's how bad at maths I was. But I regret not really investing in the process of learning statistics. One of the things that I used to do was I would write down a script for how I would answer a question in an exam for statistics. Often with statistics exams, you're kind of open SPSS. I know that's a terrible term for psychology students, but you've got SPSS open and you're running through scripts and doing different data analysis processes quantitatively through SPSS. What I used to do was I just used to write down scripts of how to do it and memorize it, and I wasn't learning a single thing. And even to this day, I really struggle with statistics. Even after having taught some statistic classes at university, I still had to check up my textbook from early in undergraduate, and I was learning things as I was going sometimes. Don't tell the tutors that, but that was the case. I wasn't learning the process of statistics. I wasn't really engaging with the material. I wasn't thinking about what it meant. Please hear me when I'm saying this. That was a huge mistake of mine. And if you really want to get ahead in psychology, in your psychology degree, and ultimately if you just want to make it easier for yourself, statistics sucks, it's hard, but there are so many ways you can make it easier for yourself. And one of those key ways is actually investing in the process of learning about statistics, of understanding what the statistics are trying to do, what those processes are for, what those data analysis processes are all about. That's the kind of stuff that's going to help. Please hear me when I'm saying this. I know it's difficult. Invest in the process of learning statistics. You'll be grateful you did. I would be really interested to hear your comments on this, guys. Make sure to comment down on the video below. What are your experiences of learning statistics or SPSS with psychology? I'm scared to say this, but maybe it's even a video for GetPsyched to do in the future. I can imagine it's going to take months of preparation, but maybe a video on statistics or SPSS or quantitative research is something that would be of interest. One of the videos I'm going to attach in the description is a really popular video on GetPsyched, actually, quantitative versus qualitative research methods. I look a little bit at statistics there, but I'm even a little bit distant on it. Maybe it's a video for the future. Let me know what you think. Guys, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit that like button. Today we've been looking at my biggest mistakes that I made during my psychology studies and during my psychology degrees, of which I've done a couple. If you've enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit that like button. You can comment on the video as well, and I'll definitely get back to you. Thanks again so much for watching, guys, and hopefully catch you next week.